The US-Israel-Iran war has set West Asia on fire. No country is safe from the consequences of this war, not even India. So is this the worst possible geopolitical scenario for New Delhi? Iran currently is on a revenge spree. It's retaliating against US and Israel by burning US bases to the ground. Even US embassies are not safe. Oil tankers limp through smoke near the Strait of Hormuz. And India? India stands uncomfortably close to the flames. Chabahar, INSTC, that's International North-South Transit Corridor. Gulf oil, 9 million Indians abroad. Everything sits in the danger zone. This is not abstract geopolitics. This hits the rupee, the fuel pump, the stock market, and Indian wallets. Today, we here at India Today Global argue if this war continues on, which President Trump has promised it will, what happens to Indian assets in Iran? Just how bad can the situation get? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Operation Epic Fury begins with thousands of US-Israeli strikes. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei dies. 49 senior leaders die. Tehran bleeds. Iran retaliates across the Gulf. UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman all feel the heat. Israel faces waves of missiles. Iraq and Jordan absorb drone strikes. US troops die. Oil jumps, flights halt, ports shut. Insurance spikes. Global markets shake. And in the middle of this inferno stands India, dependent on Gulf oil, invested in Iranian ports, tied to 9 million Indians across the region. So how deep does this fire burn into India's strategic core? Oil becomes the first casualty. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of global oil. On a normal day, more than 100 vessels pass through. Now traffic collapses. Lloyd's List records only 19 vessel transits on March 1st. Only 4 supertankers crossed that day, down from 22 the day before. No major crude tankers move through the main flow. Insurance premiums surge. Freight rates climb. Ships wait at safer anchorages.
The United States and Israel's war with Iran has spilled over into the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy choke points, prompting a surge in oil prices. Shipping through the strait, which carries 1/5 of the oil consumed globally as well as large quantities of gas, has ground to a near halt amid Iranian attacks on oil tankers in the region. A commander in Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said on Monday that the strait was closed and that any vessel attempting to pass through the waterway would be set ablaze. For India, which depends heavily on Middle East crude oil, this could translate into higher fuel prices, inflationary pressures, and economic instability. The Strait of Hormuz lies between the Iran and Oman, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and Arabian Sea. At its narrowest, it's just 33 kilometers wide, with shipping lanes barely 3 kilometers wide in each direction. Despite its size, roughly 20% of the world's oil and gas supply passes through this corridor daily, about, say, 20 to 21 million barrels of crude. It is also a vital route for liquefied natural gas, particularly from Qatar. This makes it one of the most strategically important trade arteries in the world. Most oil exports from OPEC producers like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, and Iran move through this strait, particularly to Asia. Qatar sends almost all its LNG exports through these waters. Even the threat of disruption is enough to send prices soaring. Brent crude has already surged sharply amid fears of escalation, with analysts warning that a prolonged closure could push prices beyond $100 billion. And in extreme cases, it could actually go to $150 per barrel. Oil markets are forward-looking. Traders price in risk. When tankers halt, insurers cancel coverage and freight rates hit record highs. The impact is immediate, even if the strait is not formally declared closed. Indian refiners are considering alternative crude oil sourcing options that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. The refiners are also considering oil on water options.
Markets do not wait for closure. They price fear first. India imports 85 to 90% of its crude oil. That alone defines vulnerability. Around 40 to 50% of that crude travels through the Strait of Hormuz. 60% of LNG takes the same route. Hormuz is not just a strait for India, it is an economic artery. When traffic drops from over 100 vessels a day to barely a few dozen, India feels the choke. When only 4 supertankers pass instead of 22, markets panic. Oil at $70 already stretches budgets. Oil above $85 tightens them. Oil at $100 or $130 changes the game completely. Every $10 rise adds roughly $13 to $14 billion to India's annual import bill. That widens the current account deficit by about 0.4 to 0.5% of GDP. Inflation edges towards 6 to 7%. The rupee strains toward 92 per dollar. Fuel prices rise. Transport costs rise. Food prices follow. The middle class feels it. The poor feel it harder. India stopped buying Iranian oil due to sanctions. That decision once looked strategic. Now geography mocks that comfort. Gulf crude from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Kuwait still passes through Hormuz. Even if India avoids Iranian barrels, it cannot avoid Iranian waters. If Iran mines, blocks or militarizes that choke point, India pays. LPG imports 80 to 85% via Hormuz face disruption. LNG imports about 60% through that route face squeeze. This is not a small adjustment. This is systemic risk. For years, India bet big on Chabahar Port, Iran's only deep-water, ocean-facing facility on the Gulf of Oman, 60 kilometers east of China's prized Gwadar. India poured in $500 million in investments, credit lines and equipment, cranes, rail studies, logistics infrastructure. The ambition was enormous, a route to Central Asia that completely bypassed Pakistan. A corridor that cut 40% in time and cost off the Mumbai to Central Asia route compared to going through Suez. India operated the Shahid Beheshti terminal. India shipped 3.5 million tons of wheat and fertilizer aid to Afghanistan through this port after the Taliban takeover. By late 2025, the port handled 8 million tons of cargo yearly, up from 2.5 million in 2023. The Chabahar-Zahedan rail link was 40% complete, targeting a 2026 finish. This was not just a port. This was India's geopolitical masterstroke. And then the bombs fell. Explosions were reported in Chabahar, stalling the work on the terminal and on India's geopolitical dreams.
We have a very good relationship, and India has a lot at stake in Chabahar Port, and also with Iran. There are many Iranian students in India. We have had cultural exchanges, and we agree that we have a lot of cultural, civilizational and historical connect with Iran. So far as India is concerned, there is a big Shia population which has all along been, very closely connected with Iran. And if you recall this, the main architect of the 1979 Islamic Revolution was actually his ancestral home was in Uttar Pradesh in Barabanki. And now, so there has been a connect, and now, for example, in Srinagar and in other places, the Shia community have come out and protested against the US attack. But anyway, that is the emotional side of it. But if I talk about the other issues, for India, relations with Iran are extremely important. Apart from the fact that we have, amid a hostile neighborhood, Iran acts as a very close partner of India, and also it is important that through Chabahar Port, we also have been, in a way, been able to counter the Chinese expansion in this region. So, strategically, India's response had to be very calibrated, while at the same time India has made it very clear that at this point in time it will both sides have to exercise restraint and peace and stability has to return to the region. And so far as we are concerned, we have to watch every move of what brings about and ensure that there is no further deterioration in the relationship. There are a lot of Indian community in the Gulf and the Middle East, so we have to also take care that they are not affected and there should not be any collateral damage of the Indian community in view of this conflict.
Chabahar was not a standalone asset. It served as the entry point for India's most ambitious connectivity project, the International North-South Transport Corridor, or the INSTC, a 7,200-kilometer multimodal network from Mumbai to Moscow through Iran, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Russia, and Central Asia. Signed in the year 2002, the INSTC promised to cut 40% in time and cost versus the Suez Canal route for India-Russia trade. Pre-war volumes tripled on the eastern route in 2025. Russia planned major India-bound shipments via INSTC in 2026. Projections pointed to $2.5 billion in annual savings once fully operational. Iranian focus shifted to mobilization and military defense. The Rasht-Astara rail link inside Iran sat vulnerable to drone strikes. Taliban instability blocked the eastern alternative. The middle corridor through Turkey cost 20% more. India gained nothing. India lost everything it built. And the country that stood to gain? China, watching Chabahar with patient eyes, waiting for the post-war scramble. Then there's the human dimension. 9 million Indians live across the Gulf. Remittances reach millions a year. That money supports families, education, housing, small businesses. Iranian missile strikes hit UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Airports shut, flights cancel, families panic. Relief flights begin. Emirates operates limited routes to Delhi, Chennai, Bengaluru, Mumbai, and Hyderabad. Indigo runs special flights from Jeddah. Air India Express resumes from Muscat. The Civil Aviation Ministry monitors alternate airspace routes. But every disruption costs money. Confidence shakes. Domestic ripple effects appear. Protests erupt in parts of Jammu and Kashmir over the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Several rallies across the valley. Many injured, including security personnel. A foreign war touches Indian streets. The government moves fast. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with leaders in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. Solidarity expressed, Indian community safety prioritized. Diplomacy accelerates. So where does India rank in global pain? China imports more oil overall and faces a potential GDP hit. Gulf states face direct infrastructure damage and a big hit to their GDP. Japan and South Korea depend on 95% oil imports. The US bears military costs and domestic fuel pressure. India sits in the top tier of exposed nations, not because of one single factor, but because of multiple simultaneous shocks. Energy shock, strategic project freeze, diaspora vulnerability, trade strain, inflation surge, currency pressure. Few nations carry all these burdens at once. If the conflict ends within 4 to 5 weeks, India may absorb a GDP hit. If the war stretches, oil spikes higher, and Hormuz closes even briefly, losses could climb toward a bigger percent of the GDP. That reshapes fiscal planning, growth targets, and political calculations. Worst case scenario, Hormuz shuts, oil jumps to $130 or beyond, LNG cargoes delay for weeks, inflation spikes sharply, rupee weakens fast, INSTC fragments, Chabahar militarizes or falls under sanction pressure without waivers, remittances dip if Gulf economies slow, Pakistan tests India's western flank while global focus stays on Iran. China fills vacuums in Central Asia. India faces strategic compression from west and north simultaneously. Best case scenario, ceasefire within days. Hormuz remains open under naval escort. Oil stabilizes below $100. Insurance costs normalize gradually. Waivers extend for Chabahar. Rail work resumes by late 2026. INSTC regains cargo volumes. Remittance flows stabilize. India absorbs the shock and regains balance. Is the US-Iran war India's worst possible geopolitical scenario? The honest answer is, it is close. India might just rank in the top 3 to 5 hardest hit nations globally. Not the singular biggest loser, but a country whose vulnerabilities, its fossil fuel dependence, its half-built corridors, its multi-alignment tightrope, and its 9 million hostages to Gulf stability all snapped at the same moment. Trump gave this war a 4 to 5 week timeline. Till now, there is no sign of de-escalation. Iran vowed revenge for Khamenei's death. Israeli forces deployed to the Lebanese border. The IDF struck Beirut suburbs. Hezbollah fired from South Lebanon. So is the US-Iran war the worst possible geopolitical scenario for India? It comes dangerously close. It attacks energy lifelines, freezes flagship projects, threatens diaspora safety, and pressures the economy from every side. But it is not irreversible yet. The next few weeks decide whether this remains a severe shock or becomes a strategic setback that reshapes India's regional ambitions for years. Thank you for watching Statecraft.